Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Stonehall Sports with me, LP Cruz. So the Cowboys sit here at 6-2 going into their bye week, and you can see it in two different ways, either glass half full or glass half empty. Who would have thought? The Cowboys 6-2 at the bye week with Dak Prescott missing 4 games, and also the defense being better than last year. Or among crazier things, the team re-signs Brett Maher and it actually works out. Or you could be glass half empty, where the team did make a move at the deadline, or the run defense might be a little suspect against outside runs. Or if you're like me, tired of hearing the Eagles talk about being undefeated. So tonight on the channel, with some notes that I've written down, I'm going to talk about the Cowboys and where they stand right now at the bye and beyond that. And I'll tell you right now, this video tonight is a big one. So down below, there are timestamps to see where I talked about certain talking points, the Cowboys offense, their defense, the coaching staff, the front office. If you want to skip ahead to those points, they are down below for you. And before I get started, once again, I want to remind you, if you guys like the video, like the style of content, hit that like, hit that sub button for more vids just like this one. Let's get to it. So as usual, I'm going to start with the Cowboys defense, and then I'll talk about the Cowboys offense. And what more can you say about this Cowboys defense? Right now, they're seventh in yards per game allowed in the NFL and tied for third in best points per game allowed at just under 17 points, maybe 16.8 or 16.9. And all the credit has to go to Dan Quinn to be able to manufacture the league's best pass rush. And just kind of think about this for a second. Even back during the offseason, when they didn't sign Randy Gregory, people were upset. They were up in arms and worried about the pass rush without him. But now you probably forgot he wasn't even there anymore. They have the most pressures in the NFL at 95. So you have 95 QB pressures through only 8 games this season. And think about this for a second. They're middle of the pack when it comes to blitz rate. So that means right there, they're getting a lot of pressure with sending only 3 or 4 guys. And you think about this with Michael Parsons, he is the DPOY. He is the Defensive Player of the Year without question, bar none. He's the best playmaker on defense in the NFL. And it's because of this. He's just unblockable. His hustle is excellent. You think about last week, he saved a TD versus the Lions 2 weeks ago to getting one of his own versus the Bears. And he's gotten help. He's no longer a one-man show rushing the passer. There's Dante Fowler playing good football. There's Dorrance Armstrong replacing Randy Gregory. That's very productive. The only kind of negative here is that they're not doing so well in the run defense, and here's why. And maybe it's overinflated by the Bears game. We give up 200 yards plus on the ground. But overall for this season, they are allowing 135 yards rushing per game. And it's not inspiring. If you consider them to be truly, truly elite, like one of those defenses of all time, 85 Bears or 2,000 Ravens, you got to fix the running game. And that is their Achilles heel right now. And I know he won't help the defense with the football, running the football laterally, but that could be why you traded for Jonathan Hankins, who's already paid dividends in his first game on the field. The pass defense, though, they've been great. Trayvon Diggs might be better than last year, locking down his side. And with the exception of last week, that's really not who he is. He's been exceptional this year. And Donovan Wilson has been their best safety, playing down the box to disrupt the opposing offenses. The real question mark is in the secondary, and it's always going to be around Anthony Brown. By comparison, playing next to Trayvon Diggs, he's never going to get a fair shake. And he will be picked on a lot by the opposing quarterbacks or us, the fans. That being said, the Cowboys are overall very thin at cornerback, and they can't afford to lose either him or Trayvon Diggs. Plus, in addition to that, you have a rookie, Deron Bland, now playing in the slot in place of Jordan Lewis. Once again, they're very thin at corner, and any type of injury there would be a major problem for them. So it's just something to kind of keep an eye on as we move along and go forward. And the defense overall, they're not invincible, and they've got to stay healthy in that back half and limit the outside runs. But still, from what you've seen so far, the production and the advanced numbers tell you they are a championship caliber unit right now. Now talking about the offense, and I'll be honest, the bulk of this video will focus on the offense because the offense, it's kind of changed a lot once you think about them. The first narrative was, what do you do without the receivers present by giving away Mark Cooper? Then what do you do without Dak Prescott? Then, what do you do about the backfield, which I'll talk about in a second. A lot has changed when you think about this offense, what we thought about them to be true, to be false, and then once again proven to be true. So a lot to talk about with the offense specifically. As I've already said, the defense is the anchor of this team right now. So they're already kind of sorted out and resolved. So a lot of the question, the conversation should evolve around the offense. So again, this will be the bulk of the video right here in the offense. But if you want to skip forward or skip ahead to the coaching staff, the front office, by all means. But the Cowboys offense, the offensive line has been a lot better than any of us thought. And the group as a whole should get a lot more credit than what they've got. And that's because fans, and myself included, were not sure about Terrence Steele being able to hold it down at right tackle, or that Tyler Smith would be that guy at left tackle either. You know, Steele's been very good in the running game and cutting down the mistakes that we thought he couldn't get out of his game or get out of his system. And then whereas Smith, he's had some issues with penalties, but the athletic ability, the power in his hands has made a major difference. And you think about the games they've had against the Rams, the games they had against Washington, where you had Aaron Donald held in check. The Washington front was stifled. That's a big plus to this group and what they've done to protect their quarterback. The quarterback that was not their starting quarterback in those games. And those guys they played against were not a factor. Now, for me, Zach Martin, I don't think he's been the Zach Martin, but he's still pretty good. And another guy who kind of gets walked all over is Tyler Biadasz. He's been very good. If you think about over the summer and training camp, there were talks about him not being able to keep his job for the whole season, but he's been just holding this thing down. He's been the man in the middle in charge. Like he's been locking it down. And then you also have to talk about the depth they have on the offensive line. Now, Tyron Smith might come back in about a month, and Jason Peters is still a good option to have and keep stashed away. As to what you do with Tyron Smith once he's healthy, I'm really not sure what they're going to do because for me, it makes way too much sense to have him healthy than make him go back to left tackle. You move Tyler Smith inside the left guard, but somehow I don't think that's what's going to happen. And I would say it's a mistake. And while it's important to have your guy Tyler Smith playing so much for the future, the honest truth is the Cowboys have got to win now. And it's so important to protect Dak Prescott with the best players you have. Let's not forget, on the play that Prescott got hurt, that was on Tyler Smith. He missed the assignment and Prescott got hurt. The real obstacle, I think, with moving Tyler Smith inside is just the timing. It's all about timing. And he spent so much time to this point now as a left tackle. The period to move him inside, to get him acclimated as a left guard, the timelines are not going to match up. So if he were to, let's say, Tyron Smith is healthy right now, you have the 10-day period after Thanksgiving or the bye week right now. That would make a lot more sense, but these timelines don't seem to match up. And Tyron Smith right now, what's going to happen, in my opinion, he's either your backup left tackle or maybe the swing tackle on both sides. And again, good problem to have. It's depth. So I see where they're coming from with that if they were to go that route. But overall, you can't be mad with the results and the depth has been a great problem for this unit. No question. Then we had the wide receivers. And as far as the wide receivers go, Noah Brown has done pretty solid. I mean, he's had games to hold it down. He's had very good games, actually. There's still a question mark about what's behind him, Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb. And if the reports are real that they were trying to get Brandon Cooks, I hope it doesn't bite them in the ass later because the way I see it right now is you want to see a lot more out of Michael Gallup, and maybe as part of the recovery process and playing again with Dak Prescott. Michael Gallup is your number two, but he's not made the number two stamp this season just yet. And I know that he's got it in him, but we have to see it again because he's done it before so many different times. And that's kind of the thing that I want to see more into the second half of the season is Gallup finding his legs from the ACL injury and being that guy as the number two. And speaking of twos and threes, and somebody other than Noah Brown to step up, you have to have someone else emerge in that spot. It's got to be somebody else, not Noah Brown, but it's got to be somebody else. Whether it's James Tolbert, James Washington, Simi Fehoko, somebody has got to do it. And somebody has got to be that guy. And I think that's where the fans were asking for somebody because the fans feel it. They can sense it. You know, they were asking for Brandon Cooks, they were asking for Chase Claypool, or even Denzel Mims. The fans sense a problem somehow. And that's where the uneasiness comes into play. You wanted them to add a piece to support the quarterback, whether it's a third or fourth guy, as they've done before in years past with guys like maybe a Randall Cobb. But overall, you know, props to CeeDee Lamb. And I think even with CeeDee Lamb for a second, there's been a lot of pressure on him. You think about the comments made by Jerry Jones, and CeeDee Lamb having to step up to be the number one guy, and the hole that was left on the roster by letting go of Amari Cooper. A lot of pressure has been placed on CeeDee Lamb, and as they say, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think what he's been giving back to us is a consistent effort over the last course of let's say, the Giants game per se. He had a great game versus the Giants, a great game against the Bears, and he's gotten just better and better and more consistent every single time out. And I think that's been the most important thing you've seen at a CeeDee Lamb now in year three is being a more consistent force for the Cowboys. And he's finding his groove. I just think he really needs to have some more running mates to back him up when things get more difficult. Then from that point, the tight ends, and I wrote here in my notes, tight ends popping. And yes, they have. The tight ends have been popping so far. And I'm going to try to speed this up. I'm going on for a bit. But the tight ends have been great. They've been great. Both rookie tight ends have been doing a great job blocking, and they've done just enough in the passing game to alleviate the burden off the wide receivers. You think about the Giants game too, with I think it was Jake Ferguson or Peyton Hendershot, Jake Ferguson against the Eagles. They've been taking some of the play to the wide receivers. I think that's a great thing going forward and a great find. One in the fourth round, one undrafted, respectively, for Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson. And it's allowed them to play with less receivers and more tight ends, even some plays with no running backs, three tight ends. It's just a great group that they have here. And for Dalton Schultz, I mean, you're playing good too, but just sleep with one eye open because these guys are coming. They're coming on really well for rookies. Again, fourth round, undrafted, but they're coming on very well and very competent so far in what they've been asked to do, the tight ends. Then Dak Prescott. And for Dak Prescott, I think, you know, coming back from the thumb injury in the two games, I think he's played very well since coming back, since he's been back. He's played very good. And the stats won't tell you that for what you're looking for, but you really watch the way he's played and you watch the game from a different perspective or a different angle, literally, and you'll see how good he is, how important he actually is. And I said this before, but the difference between him and Cooper Rush, it should be obvious to most people. It should be. And the thing about him is that he is confident to maximize his throws in the middle of the field, and all the weapons around him, they feed off of that. The receivers, the tight ends, and even the running backs, they feed off of the presence of Dak Prescott. And I think the entire roster does too, if I'm being honest with you. So if you're somebody who's still now in Dak's seventh year, you don't see his value, then that's your own blind ass fault. And I really can't help you there. But if you look at the entire scope of the NFC now, it's wide open. And all the QBs that you were told are way better than Dak Prescott or Dak can't be anywhere near them. Well, guess what? They're struggling. That's Aaron Rodgers. That's Tom Brady. That's Kyler Murray. Finally, you guys can see it. That's Kyler Murray struggling as well. It just for the Cowboys, and I think just how you think about this, for them to have any real chance to make a move or to make a push with a conference that's struggling right now, you needed Dak Prescott. So if you were a person that didn't see that, you better see it now because the Cowboys needed Dak Prescott to be present for them to make that push going forward. And they are exponentially better with Dak Prescott than they are without him. And again, if you're a Prescott pundit, or worse, a Romo Ranger, save all that for January, and maybe I'll listen to you. But right now with Dak Prescott, this team has a great shot in the arm thanks to his presence being there. And then this last part with the offense, and I wanted to cap it off talking about the running backs. And there's been a lot of things said in the news cycle the last 3, 4, 5 days about Tony Pollard after having a great game. And after having a great game, the things said are all the wrong things that make really no sense. This whole idea or this thought process that he was too tired to handle heavy workload when the coach penciled him in for 20 carries, if not more than that. It's just stupid. It's dumb. It's very dumb. And instead of me talking a lot, let me ask you guys a question. And you guys tell me, what do you think is more reasonable? A runner that's almost 2,000 carries deep in his career, including 3 years of more than 300 carries, needing to be fed, force fed, to establish his will on the defense, or incorporating a guy that has a quarter of that same usage with the higher yards per touch and a career long of 58, 57, and 46 yards, two of which are from the season. What makes the most sense? What has the most rationale? I know it's a tough question to ask. But in all seriousness, though, and all jokes aside, it's more things being pushed that don't make much sense. It's more fitting pieces in certain slots that they don't belong in. For me personally, and I know I said it before, and it's not me being a prisoner of the moment, but I'd like to see a change at running back or a change at the guard. Only not in title or in names, because this is all about the names, but just in idea or just in the belief or the rhetoric. And it's not a change necessarily from the staff because it's not the staff, it's not the coaches that do this. It's really the front office. The front office is the ones driving the bus to have this be a thing when it's so clear and obvious. And the way I see it is there's no need to insist on relying heavily on Zeke Elliott when you have Tony Pollard anymore. There's no purpose in doing that. The carry splits to me are fine. The carry and the load management to me is fine. Maybe just a bit more from Pollard would make sense. But this whole rhetoric of Tony was tired or he caps off at a certain load, all of that to me is just nothing but front office propaganda. And it's them justifying taking Zeke Elliott top five in the draft and then paying him $90 million. And to be honest, it's probably more posturing by the front office of them trying to bring down or lessen the value of Pollard in the media as they always do to their players. That goes from Zeke himself, that goes to I want to say Des Bryant like 10 years ago. That's just what they do. They like to bicker in the media to drive down players' value in their markets to serve their own purposes. So I personally ignore that, but that's kind of what's going on. But you check the numbers, you check the stats, you check the explosiveness of Pollard. Just, I mean, watching the game, it's so obvious and it's as clear as day. And it says a lot that a simple handoff can be a game changing play whenever that guy touches the ball. And for what it's worth, also just give him more catches, more screens to him. It's not happening enough. I think he should be more involved in the passing game. But that said, I mean, I don't dislike Zeke, and I still think that he holds value, but I don't want to see them to hold themselves back. And I don't think you need to throttle down your offense because of your own stubbornness. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And if anything, use both guys together interchangeably and wisely, and I think it'll be fine. And there's no reason to overthink this or just try to push the envelope or force the issue. You have two really good running backs. Use them together, and we'll see what happens as you get deeper into the postseason and the playoffs, or regular season and the postseason, I should say. Not a big deal. Not a big deal whatsoever. And as for the coaches, some might be very critical of the coaching staff with certain things like clock management, personnel, whatever the case is. I'd say though at this point they've earned our trust. Mike McCarthy for starters. When Dak went down, the panic should have kicked in, and for us, it should have. I mean, for me, sure. Now, how they respond after losing the way they did versus Tampa, and then Dak being hurt, it almost felt like losing twice. But the way they kept it together, you got to give them credit for that. I mean, no Gallup, no Dak, no Tyron Smith, and it wasn't a problem. And you think about the last coach when they had Jason Garrett. If you didn't have Tyron Smith, what would happen? Or if Romo wasn't there, what would happen? How would they win games? And yeah, I get it. There was 2020, but they didn't fare well. And having Dan Quinn there to bridge the gap, it does a lot. And speaking of Dan Quinn and what he's done for the defense is nothing but incredible. You can argue that maybe he saved the career of Leighton Vander Esch, who probably would have been washed out. And maybe he's also responsible for Michael Parsons not being just an off-ball linebacker either, just being a chess piece for the defense. So if anything, you have to just acknowledge what he does every single week, having them prepared, having a pass rush despite what they have around them. He's done a great job. And I think for me, as a Cowboy fan of the last almost 30 years, I don't think I've ever had this type of understanding of the game and understanding what this defense actually is. It's the best defense I could say with a full cognition of football, full understanding of football. That's the best that I can recall. I've never seen a Cowboys defense this good. And I think that all goes back to Dan Quinn and the leader that he is with this team. In regards to the front office and the ownership, they are very easy to hate. They complain about the stuff with the piece of the pie and the salary cap, but then they'll stick both fingers in the pie. And let's not get this thing twisted. This whole Cooper Rush controversy, that was started by Jerry Jones, trying to start something for YouTube ad money. The whole story is about Pollard's stamina, and that's just them, like I said, trying to justify taking that draft pick when people told them, hey, Derrick Henry would be a better value for you. That's just all of them. And then not making the trade because they wanted to wait till the last minute with Brandon Cooks. And then them really not being confident in their ways to manipulate the cap going into the next season. That's where that comes from with this front office. And all that said, you still can't be mad about the choices they've made so far that we've mocked them for. Sure, Amari Cooper looks okay in Cleveland. That's fine. But Lyle Collins has been terrible with the Bengals. And Randy Gregory, like I said, you probably haven't missed him. He was going to be outproduced by Dorrance Armstrong anyway, had he not been hurt. And again, Brett Maher has been absolute cash, even with Tyler Smith. And we dragged him for that pick, but that was the right choice to make. And maybe it's just luck through just ridiculous hubris, but they've built an NFC contender in this NFC that has the right traits of good leadership. I don't like them, but you must give their respect for what they've done. Looking ahead and beyond that, I think the Cowboys are in a good spot. First, they're getting healthier with no big significant injuries. Then the schedule ahead is very favorable. And Green Bay, they're no longer that boogeyman that the Cowboys fans feared. Aaron Rodgers is old and all by himself. He's still mean, he's still snarky, but it's not quite the same energy anymore. And then the biggest game on the calendar outside the Eagles, I think, is the Vikings, which could determine the playoff seeding if both teams do win their divisions. And that should tell you a lot about what I think about New York and Washington. With Dak, I think they match up well with any team in the NFC, especially Green Bay or Tampa if they make the playoffs. The real wild card still is the Niners based on how they match up with their defense and if they are healthy with their guys. That would include Deebo Samuel. But really, I think it's a dead race to the finish line between Dallas and Philly. And my gut says one of these two teams will make the big game, and they will play in the postseason. As to who wins that game, I don't know. Ask me in January. But that's it for tonight. Those are my thoughts. Thank you for rocking with me on this long video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Again, thanks for watching. Like always, hit that like, hit that sub button, and Cowboys up. Peace.